everybody, we are Marcos Planchart.
And I'm Hercule.
And before we start our presentation, I wanted to ask all of you if you could raise your hand, whoever actually follows the Winter Olympics. Well, there is a lot of people that don't actually follow them, but this is a good time to start because these are special Olympics because for the first time in many years, North and South Korea will unify to send a team for the Winter Olympics. That's why Hugh and I have raised the question on will a unified Korean Olympic team end decades of segregation between both countries.
First of all, I'd like to introduce a brief history of Korea on the reason why there's segregation. If you look at the picture here, for most of its 4,000-year history, Korea used to be one united country, including when it was colonized by Japan. The division of Korea into North and South stems from the Allied victory in World War II, 1945, ending 35 years of Japan's colonization. This General Order Number 1, issued by General Douglas MacArthur, which was five-star general in United States, resulted a division of South Korea and North Korea into two nations along the 38th parallel of latitude for more than 6 decades. And as you can see from here, 38th of parallel of latitude lies about half of Korea into two nations. And subsequently, the segregation lasted for more than 6 decades along the fortified DMZ zone, which is also known as demilitarized zone, which is a border barrier of 250 kilometers long and 4 kilometers width. So Marcos will explain.
Now that we know why is there segregation, we need to know why do they actually unify for the Olympics. The International Olympic Committee has confirmed the unification of both countries for this sporting event that is right now in February in Planchart, South Korea. But people can actually explain why these two countries that have so much tension can unify under the same flag. But rather than being for the gold medals, is to open the ties for communication between North and South Korea, communications that has been strained for almost 10 years, as the chief North delegate said, Jong Jong-soo. Now that North and South Korea had already unified for other sporting events, such as the 2006 Winter Games as part of a failed sunshine policy, but these Winter Olympics are of so much more magnitude because there are more than 500 North Korean athletes, journalists, cheerleaders, and musicians participating, and they are even having talks about having events in North Korea. But many speculate because of the Kim Jong-un New Year's speech where he agreed to send a delegation to the Winter Olympics, but many journalists consider that this is just a maneuver to improve the inter-Korean relationships, but at the same time to weakening the US sanctions and the US power in South Korea that has been putting so much pressure in the North dictatorship. This is also this can also be considered as, with them talking together, the new South Korean government is basically sending a message to the US that they do not intend to follow their confrontational foreign policy approach. And with this, we can see that sports, and in this event, the Winter Olympics, can be powerless by itself, but when used strategically, it can improve even foreign policy between two nations that have been separated for decades. There are actually many theories involving whether this will work or whether this will not work, but some say that relationships could actually improve. This is, for the moment, for the International Olympic Committee, the objectives is just to have a peaceful Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang, but for the international community, is the dialogue between Seoul and Pyeongchang, the capitals of North and South Korea respectively, and what their leaders will discuss next or what they will do next. And the long-run objectives for the international community is for North Korea to reduce their nuclear arsenal, but there is a long way to go for that. At the moment, we can agree that they could achieve a peaceful solution, because right now South Korea and North Korea are talking to each other, as I already said, after 2 years of not even speaking one word. Before, North Korea will ask to talk specifically to the US, who will refuse this offer because they first wanted North Korea to reduce their nuclear power, so like they did with Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi. And this is actually, some people say that the non-intervention of the US is not good, but it actually shows that if there is an agreement between both Koreas, this could end in a peaceful resolution rather than a bloody war or argument.
Well, on the other hand, some people say it's all facade. South Korean government had spent huge amount of money and time to improve the inter-Korean relationship by making a policy that was made by Kim Dae-jung, a former South Korean president, in 2000. And he was even awarded a Nobel Peace Prize of making this policy. But unfortunately, this policy couldn't solve any problems, because North Korea had no effort on improving the inter-Korean relationship. But instead, when South Korean government tried to stop supplying them by the myth of policy made by the former president, they instead used nuclear weapons to threaten the South Korean government. And as you can see from the picture, the pre-Olympic joint cultural event, which was meant to held in mountain of Kumgang in North Korea, but the North Korean government decided to cancel the event to focus on the formal military parade, which is held a day before the Olympics opening parade. And Marcus and I have decided that, in conclusion, me being a South Korean, a native, and him being a foreigner to this situation, we might have different opinions and perspectives in these subjects. In one hand, me being a South Korean, all the news and the situations happening are what we have experienced. So it's like most of the South Koreans are not really optimistic on the reunification. Because, as an example, when I was serving a military in Korea for 2 years, I saw several times of North Korean government using nuclear weapons to threaten the relationship between two nations. And
in the other hand, we that are not inside their country, South Korea, and haven't been in the military as Hyuk, we based our information out of newspapers that inform us what is happening. And they may or may not actually say what the people in South Korea and in North Korea think about the reunification. We have to be careful with the sources we use, but we also need to be touching hand with people who actually have been living there all this time. Now, before we leave, we wanted to make a quick poll to you to know what do you think about this situation. This is a survey made by the Seoul University, one of the best universities in South Korea, in which you can see the opinion of the South Koreans, whether in the need for unification, being the blue line if it is necessary, the orange one not necessary, and the gray one people that are neutral. If you could please raise your hands. Those that think that South Korea and North Korea could achieve unification. Please raise your hand. Well, for those who don't think that is necessary or that don't have an opinion yet, we hope that after this presentation you have the necessary information to build your own opinion in the future. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Whose idea was this, like to get in each other?
This was first an idea of South Korea. They made a speech in June of last year, but there was not a clear response from North Korea until Kim Jong-un's New Year's speech.
Thank you.
You mentioned two names at a point, Muammar Gaddafi and what was the second name?
Saddam Hussein.
Okay, that's my question.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.